President, please be seated. The court is now back in session, and the floor is given to the defense team for the accused to resume the questioning. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excluding my questions in relation to John's statement and the statements of Koi Toon, I have another 7 subjects that I would like to ask questions on to the witness. As you said this morning, we only have until 11, so I would now like to cede the floor to the Kir Sampan team and then resume afterwards. I believe I need at least 2 full additional sessions, Mr. President. Preempting a response to the prosecution, allow me to say that prosecution doesn't deserve equal time in this respect of this witness, because the prosecution has already interviewed this witness in 2006 and one time extensively during the hearing in case 001. So in this particular case, the argument of equal time for both the prosecution and the defense doesn't apply.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think the defense is quite aware of what happened this morning. Since last week, a decision had already been handed down by the chamber to the effect that the defense should not be allowed to use the contents of confessions this morning as we discussed. And in doing so, the defense has opened a long debate on the subject and lost time in so doing. And I think it is a deliberate choice regarding time sharing. The fact that we could have examined the witness in 2009, at the time the rules in force at the time were different, and it was the chamber that asked questions at the time. And in that case, they have 40 minutes. The chamber has had 40 minutes to put questions to the witness. It's not a whole day that should be asked for. I think the chamber should share the time equally, and it should give more time to the Kir Sampan team and not to the Nuon Chea team, because they've already used up their time.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Président. Je vous remercie.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, witness. My name is Anta Gise. I am International Co-Counsel for Mr. Kir Sampan, and it is in this capacity that I would like to put a few follow-up questions to you. First of all, I'd like to put questions to you regarding the period during which you worked as a guard, and I would like you to confirm this. When you were a guard outside of the S21 premises, did you not have any contact with staff working within the buildings and who were conducting interrogations at the time? Can you please confirm that?
When I was guarding at the outer perimeter, I did not have relation with the guards inside. Sometimes the guards inside would walk out of the compound, and we would have a discourse or a chit-chat about other matters, but not about what was happening inside the compound.
Est-ce que vous vous souvenez lorsque
when you were a guard, standing guard outside, do you recall meeting a person called Lakmin who testified before this chamber?
That person's name is Lajmian. It was almost at the end of the regime, that is on the 7th January 1979, that I started to know him. After members of 703 were arrested, the people from the West, including Lajmian, were sent to replace those people who had been sent away or arrested.
Donc je comprends de votre...
So if I understand your testimony, what you're saying is that you did not work with him when you stood guard outside of the S21 premises, guarding the gate of S21. To be more specific, as regards your standing guard outside the S21, do you recall how many of you worked as guards outside of the S21 premises?
There was a group of guards, 12 of us, and we stayed at the currently behind radio station.
Pour essayer de comprendre comment était...
I'll try to understand how the premises of S21 were guarded with the President's leave. I'll show you a photograph we have on record, and it's document E3/9431. And I would like to know whether you can see on this photograph the place where you stood guard. The ERN in French is 00181450, in English 00198029, and in Khmer 00181396. And with your leave, Mr. President, may I request the the court clerk to show the photograph to this witness.
President, yes, please.
Je voudrais savoir si, sur cette photo,
I would like to know whether you can see the place where you stood guard with your colleagues who worked as guards on this photograph. Can you see that place on this photograph, or was further on from what you can see on this photograph, somewhere else?
That photo was not taken close to a location where I stood guard.
est-ce que je dois comprendre que...
Should I take it that the place where you stood guard was a bit further on from the external premises, the exterior of the premises you can see on this photograph?
It was outside the prison compound, a bit away from that compound.
Ma question est donc de...
My question is therefore as follows. During that period, was there another gate that was established separately from what you can see on this gate? Because when you were interrogated, when you were examined, you said you stood guard in front of a gate. And when you talk of a gate, I understand that there was a wall. Was there another wall apart from the wall that you see on this photograph, a separate wall?
There was another fence, and that is the zinc fence, and the second level of fence was surrounded by barbed wire, and there was the gate's name, Strastong Gate, at the location opposite to the fire station department.
Monsieur le témoin, est-ce que vous pourriez...
Witness, can you please repeat the name you gave in describing the place near the station of the firefighters, because the French interpreter didn't quite hear what you stated.
That gate was in the west of the current beehive radio station, and right now that location was turned into the fire department.
Vous avez évoqué une clôture en...
You talked of a zinc fence mounted with barbed wire. Do you know when that fence was built? That is the fence outside of which you were stationed.
After I was at the place, the fence had already been there. Perhaps it may have been built before I was there.
Vous avez indiqué que vous étiez...
You have stated that you were a guard. My question to you is as follows. How did you cross-check whether the persons who were entering S21 were duly authorized to do so? Did you have any documents on which you relied? And how did you go about it?
Before I opened the gate for them to enter, there was no specific or official document presented to me. The reason that I opened the gate was that I recognized the truck, the vehicles, and the drivers.
Donc, si je comprends...
So if I understand your answer correctly, what you're saying is that a vehicle that was not an S21 vehicle was never authorized to enter the premises of S21.
If the vehicles did not belong to S21, those vehicles were not authorized to go into S21. Only S21 trucks or vehicles were allowed to go inside.
Je voudrais maintenant...
I'd like to focus on the time you worked as an interrogator. But before I do so, I have one last point to deal with. We have on record a document, E3/8386. It is a circular directed to S21 staff in principle, and it consists of a number of rules. And rule number 8, ERN in French is 00532-733, and the ERN in English is 00521631, and the ERN in Khmer is 00002637, and it is rule number 8, and this is what is stated in the rule. During the patrols, the cadres of the group of 50 have to be present at the guard post of each sector who are responsible for guarding that particular location. First question, is the unit of 50 indeed the unit that was in charge of guarding the exterior of S21? I mean the exterior of the fence as a stood guard at the gate.
បាទហៅថា
The 50-man unit at the time were of the soldiers groups, and this unit was in charge of 3 groups, in fact, and the locations of the guards where they had to stand guard. And at night time, the 50-man unit members would go around and monitor the guards under their responsibility, whether or not those guards were really standing guard at night time.
Dans l'extrait que
In the extract of the circular I've just read out to you, mention is made of various sectors that had to be watched over. My question is as follows. Were the different sectors of S21, or there were sectors that were related to the gate and the fence around S21?
បាទមុខសញ្ញា
As for the guards, they were the guards for S21. However, they had different duty stations to guard, and those guards were all under supervision of S21.
donc peut-être pour préciser ma question.
Let me be more specific in my question. Were there sectors that had to do with the exterior of S21, including the S21 gate? That is, bearing in mind that a number of sectors are mentioned in this article.
បាទនឹង
And for guards who were required to stand guard outside S21, they would stand guard at this outside the compound, but not inside. However, as I said, they were all under supervision of S21.
Je voudrais donc maintenant m'attacher à la partie.
I would now like to talk about the time when you were an interrogator. You have stated that when you had to interrogate anyone, all you received from the outset were the person's name, province of origin, and cell number. Can you please confirm to me that as part of your interrogations, you never got into contact with the persons who had to arrest the persons you had to interrogate before you started your interrogations?
Prisoners were not allowed to communicate with one another even the time when they were inside the compound.
Je dois m'être mal exprimé, donc je repose.
Perhaps I wasn't clear enough. Let me ask my question again. When you had to interrogate a particular prisoner, you yourself were never in touch with the persons who had to arrest or who had arrested those persons to bring them to S21. Did I properly understand your testimony?
But
they did not have relation with the guards, the one who arrested those people. Actually, those who arrested the prisoners did not communicate and never knew those prisoners before.
Vous avez indiqué.
You said at the hearing of the 27th of April, sometime after 13 hours 26 minutes, you said that it was Deutsch Tit, that is your superiors, who could attend your interrogations. Were there any other persons who could attend such interrogations?
បាទចំពោះមេ
For my superiors, only Tit, my direct superior in the group, did the interrogation as well. He was the group chief of mine, and he had the authority to go in and out of the interrogation room.
Et qu'en est-il de Duik?
How about Deutsch?
បាទដូចហ្នឹងជា
Dutch would come to my location once in a while, and he would he came across to my location once in a while, and he went into the interrogation room. It was not his daily duty to come and monitor us.
Donc en dehors de vos.
So apart from your superiors, no other person was authorized to enter the interrogation room in which you interrogated prisoners. Did I properly understand your testimony?
Answer, that is correct.
Et est-ce que je peux donc conclure?
And I therefore conclude that under those circumstances, you yourself were not allowed to enter the interrogation rooms in which your colleagues were interrogating other prisoners.
For other rooms, I had no authority to go into their rooms, unless I had the authorities, I would go inside those rooms.
Est-ce que, en tant que... j'ai compris qu'il y avait plusieurs...
I have understood that there were several units of interrogators. Were you allowed to discuss the contents of your interrogations and your work between the different units among yourselves? That is, people from different units. Could you discuss the contents of your interrogations?
The right to discuss our work and the contents of interrogation, no. And we were obliged to report how the work was going to the group chief, but we were not allowed to discuss among all of us in relation to our work and interrogation.
Je voudrais maintenant évoquer avec vous.
I would like us to now focus on the training sessions you attended and which you refer to. These are sessions at S21. The first question is as follows regarding training sessions and meetings with Deutsch. How regularly did you attend such meetings?
That training was an ordinary training session. Sometimes it happened once a week or once in a twice night. once in 2 months, half a month. And I met him only at the political training schools.
Au cours de ces formations,
During those political training sessions, and in the course of the various months you spent at S21, were you informed of the situation on the battlefront, or whenever there were incursions of Vietnamese troops inside Cambodian territory?
រឿងសង្គ្រាម
They never announced about the war happening outside.
Je vous pose cette question parce
I ask this question because in a document that has been used at length by the co-prosecutor, document E3/833, that is the famous John's notebook, the ERN in French is 00282536, and the ERN in Khmer is 0007779. There is no ERN for the English. This is what is stated in the notebook. In April 1977, they are talking of Vietnamese, let me specify. In April 1977, they said that they wanted to attack us at Phnom Nok, Kampot. We smashed all of them. On the 27th of October 1977, they wanted to cut road number 13. We smashed all of them. And in December 1977, they even went as far as Meng Vieng. The Vietnamese launched a general offensive. They succeeded. Up to October 1977, we killed 10,000 people in their group. We, the Vietnamese, waged war. End of quotes. Free translation. I would like you to state whether this refreshes your memory as to what you were able to hear, whether as part of training sessions or discussions of an informal nature that you had with other members of S21. When you were working at S21, did you ever hear of an offensive launch in December 1977 at Svai Rien?
I used to hear that issue frequently, but it was just a rumor. It was not the official topic or subjects of training sessions. That was only the rumor. Sometime I learned that rumor from the statement of prisoners.
toujours au sujet
Still with regard to those attacks on the border that you heard of during a number of months, we have some press articles referred to, whether we're talking of Cambodian press or the press in neighboring countries regarding incursions. I'm referring to document E3/7315, and it is an SVIS document. The ERN in Khmer is S01137156, and it continues up to 62, and in English S00013209, and it continues up to the ERN that ends with 11. And I'm referring specifically to an article of the Bangkok Post of the 24th of October 1978, in which reference is made that is October 1978. They are referring to incursions by several Vietnamese divisions into Cambodian territory. My question to you is as follows. Did you ever hear of that in S-21, that around late October 1978, there were such Vietnamese incursions? Did you hear about that? Be it during training sessions or in the course of discussions or rumors that you may have heard? Correction by the interpreter. The reference was made to an FBIS document.
But Vietnam
I heard of it. They, in fact, did not discuss the offensive by the Vietnamese. However, in the discussion, it was about the offensive of the Khmer Rouge into Vietnam, which happened at Svay Rieng and Ta Cao, and sometimes it was said that the Khmer Rouge were able to go deep in until and they could reach Prenoco, but it was not the full discussion of the matter.
Toujours sur
Now, regarding the same document again, E3/7315, here I will be focusing on a Vietnamese article called Con Doi Nan Dan. So 23 October 1978 is the date, where a priori speaking, there's a press article describing rebellions, Cambodian rebellions against the Ieng Sari and Pol Pot clique in October 1978. And what I wanted to know is if you ever heard at S21 about this kind of rebellion that took place in October 1978, and if you noted then that there was an arrival of new prisoners around that period.
But
I cannot recall that, as this matter happened many years ago.
un autre point.
Another point I'd like to discuss with you regarding the end of 1978 again. Before this chamber, several witnesses spoke about the visit of two foreign journalists and of a foreign professor, Professor Caldwell, who died during that visit, who was assassinated. So my question is, did you ever hear or do you remember if this issue was discussed at S21? That is to say, the assassination of this foreign professor. And if this had any effects on your work at S21.
I did not hear or know anything regarding this Mr. Caldwell. I only heard about it just then.
Et
Do you remember if you heard about the visit of foreign visits, even if you might not have heard about Professor Caldwell around that period?
No, I did not hear anything about that.
un
Now I'd like to speak about a specific point regarding Doik in your statement E3/79, French ERN 001647587, Khmer ERN 00146594, English ERN 00161554. You spoke about pulling out nails of certain prisoners, saying that the idea of such a method came from Doik. So my question is the following: when did you hear Doik speak about this? Was this during a training session, or is it someone else who told you about this torture method as having been recommended by Doik?
Regarding the mistreatment of prisoners by pulling out their nails, at the political school, Dutch gave us his instructions on this matter, that is to use a round head needle to insert it under the nail, and that the method he taught us, and that was the first time that I heard about this kind of a method, and it was taught to us by Dutch.
I'm putting this question to you, witness, because at the hearing of 16 June 2009, document E3/5800, a little bit after 3:15 in the afternoon, Doik said that he heard about this method, but this is what he said regarding this method, and I quote, free translation: "Then I warned the interrogators that they should not continue, otherwise I would report that to my superiors." Caen said that he had not pulled out any nails, and that he had not gone so far as pulling out nails with pliers. Based on this warning, this practice was discontinued. End of quote. So, Doik therefore said that not only he did not give such instructions, but especially that he was against the use of such a method, and that he asked that such a method be discontinued. So does that correspond to what you remember or not?
Dutch never told us to stop pulling out nails, because it was him who instructed us to do that. Maybe that statement is made by himself in order to avoid himself being in trouble.
You said when you were examined last week that you saw Son Sen only once during a training session that was a political training session. And Lac Mien testified as well, and he said at the hearing of 26 April 2016 at 2:24 in 57 seconds in the afternoon, he said the following, and I quote, free translation: "I saw Son Sen, who came to give political training sessions at S21. Based on my recollections, he came quite often. He came 4 to 5 times to conduct these political training sessions at S21. End of quote. So my question is this something that refreshes your memory? Did Son Sen come often to S21, as Lac Mien said? Or do you stand by what you just said, that is to say that you only saw him once?
As for Son Sen coming through S21, I previously stated that to my recollection, I saw him coming through S21, but I cannot recall for sure whether he came for one time or twice. And when Son Sen came through S21, he never came through the prison buildings. He was only at the political school where Dutch was.
Et précisément,
Now, regarding this point specifically, the co-prosecutor put to you the question of the possible existence of a hierarchical link between Son Sen and Doik, but you did not really answer that question, so I'm putting that question to you again. So do you know if there was any kind of special hierarchical relationship between both of these individuals?
Dutch and Son Sen had their communication, and it was like it was a communication between the leadership level to the leader of S21.
donc je comprends.
So I understand from your answer, therefore, that Son Sen, or based on what you noted, that you considered that Son Sen was Duik's superior. Is that what I must understand?
Yes, that is correct.
In the last point regarding the training, or your training, you said that there were issues of confidentiality, that everybody had to conduct their interrogations without sharing information. But do you remember if the principle of secrecy, which we spoke about quite often in this trial, was also passed on to you during the training sessions?
During each study session, we were repeatedly reminded to remain confidential and to maintain secrecy, and that we should plant a kapok tree, that is to keep ourselves silent and not to spread information from one person to the next.
I am done with my cross-examination, Mr. President.
Like I said before, Mr. President, I hope I could conclude my questions in 2 sessions, and I'm not sure, but I will strive to. So my request again is to be allowed to continue questioning the witness. If you are interested, I'm happy also to tell you the topics that I would like to ask some more additional questions about the whole blood drawing incident or incidents that he speaks about, the matter of the Vietnamese baby that he talked about, the arrest of spouses and children in general, his last day in S21, 7 January 79, some follow-up questions, the questions of my colleague, questions about Khmer Sarai, Khmer Sar, question about annotations on confessions. So there are quite some topics that I haven't addressed yet that I would like to address with the witness.
Mr. President, we presented our position earlier, and our position remains unchanged.
And what about the lead co-lawyers for civil parties?
We will rely on the Chamber's wisdom.
President, the Chamber will not grant the request of Council Nguyen Chia, that is Council Copper, that's Council for Nguyen Chia. And due to the discussion this morning, the Chamber will grant additional 15 minutes to Council Nguyen Chia. That is the time that we use to discuss the matter in relation to the confession. So, Council, you have 15 minutes, that is from now until the lunch break.
For the record, Mr. President, we consider that to be a flagrant violation of the fair trial rights of Nguyen Chia. Having said that, let me start, Mr. Witness, by following up something you said in response to questions of the Khieu Samphan Council. And that was about the method of putting needles underneath the nail of a prisoner. You said that you didn't hear this. You said you didn't hear Duik say anything about this. But is it true that you were gone from S21 for a long period in 1978?
Witness, please hold on, and International Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you have the floor.
Juste une question.
Just an issue of translation, because in French we heard that the question was that you did not hear Duik speak about the method of inserting needles under the nails. I think it should be formulated in the positive mode. But I really did not understand the question, so could the question please be put again to the witness?
Let me rephrase to be clear. Is it correct that you were gone from for a long time from S21 in 1978 because of your battlefield injuries?
During 1978, there was a relapse of my injury since I was wounded in the battlefield. That is, I had problem with my lung at the time, and for that reason, it needed a longer treatment during that year. So I did not work, and I was treated. There was a female medic, Thorn, who was also a prisoner at S21, who treated me with acupuncture needles during that year, and later on I recovered and I resumed my work.
When you came back after your recovery, were you somehow brought up to speed either by Duik or by the chief of your group as to what at that time the policy was within S21?
Please repeat your question.
You were brought to the hospital, you were treated for a long time, you said, in 1978. When you came back to S21 and started interrogating again, did someone tell you what the policy was toward the prisoners who were interrogated? What methods could be used? What was decided about this in the months that you had been gone?
After I resumed my work, there was no new instructions given to me. I simply resumed my line of work.
And then in relation to the times that you saw Son Sen, you said you saw him once, maybe twice, at the political school. Did you see him before you went back to the hospital to be treated, or afterwards?
Through my recollection, I saw him before my treatment.
You were not able to give an estimate when asked this question during the time that you were questioned in this courtroom. I'm asking you it again today. Can you give us an estimate as to how long you were away from S21? Was it months? Was it weeks? Was it maybe a full year? You talked about a long time. What does that mean, a long time?
I can recall the period that I was hospitalized. It could be between 4 to 5 months.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. Now let me move on to the procedures of the confessions itself. Once you typed a definite version of a confession, how many copies were made in total? I presume you used the old-fashioned carbon paper, as it is called. How many copies did you make from the original typewritten document?
At that time, there was no photocopy machine. I used carbon papers and I made 6 copies.
For every confession, there were 6 copies. So going to Chun's confession, to be more specific, you made 6 copies of Chun's confessions. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. There was 6 copies.
And do you know where each of those 6 copies would go to? I presume one would go to the archive, but where did the other copies go to? Do you know?
I didn't keep any of the 6 copies. I gave all to Dutch, and I did not know whom he gave some copies to.
Do you know whether Duik, in his turn, sent clean copies to others, or did he send copies with his annotations to others?
I did not know which copies he sent to upper echelon. I only knew that I gave them to Dutch, and if he needed to make any amendment, he would return them to me.
But is it fair to say that when you were completely done with interrogating a prisoner, when you were, for instance, completely done with Chun, there were 6 clean copies of his statement, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Let me move on now to some questions on the final days that you were at S21. You gave quite a bit of testimony already about tanks approaching and the decision to hastily leave the premises of S21 on the 7th of January 79. I have a few questions about, let's say, the 2 weeks before 7 January 1979. Did you get an order, or did your group get an order from Duik or anyone to destroy the administration of S21, to burn, for instance, the confessions, to burn the prisoner records, to burn the photos? Did you ever get such an order?
Toward the end of the regime, and about 2 weeks before 7 January 1979, there was no instruction to bring in prisoners for interrogation. It means the interrogation ceased, and we only stayed at the house that we stayed. As for the remaining documents, or the documents that we threw in the rubbish bins, had to be destroyed. And that is related to our interrogation team, but I did not know about Dutch or about what he did to other teams or units.
But were you yourself involved in the actual destruction of any piece of paper of S21?
As for documents, besides the documents within my team, no, I did not know anything about that. We only burned away the wasted documents in the bin, for example.
Did you or anyone working S21 take with you, when you were escaping, documents or administration from S21?
I cannot tell you about other people. As for me, I did not bring any document. I only have a backpack with some of my clothes.
Just returning a bit to those last 2 weeks, did you see any fires of houses where interrogations took place? Did you see a fire, for instance, in the house where prisoners were received? The Beehive radio station. Did you see any clear attempts of destruction?
There was no burning down of the interrogation office. The table, the circle, or the shaft remained intact. And later on, even when I returned, those materials were still there.
I will leave the bigger subjects. Mr. President, one last follow-up question in relation to something that the Kirstenpan Council just asked. You said that only trucks would enter the premise of S21 trucks with prisoners. Do you know whether there were also other cars with prisoners coming into the premises of S21 and its outer perimeter?
Among all the vehicles, I did not see any other vehicles except the S21 vehicles, since S21 have this means of transport to bring prisoners in, and besides S21 vehicles, I did not see any other vehicle.
Have you ever heard of a prisoner called Pik?
No, the name does not ring a bell.
He was one of the prisoners that survived. That was, at least so that's how it's presented. But he was in S21 working presumably as some sort of mechanic. Pik.
I know Tapek.
Tapek, we'll call him Tapek. He told interviewers that he wasn't brought into S21 in a truck, but in a Peugeot 404. Do you know whether normal cars were also used to bring prisoners?
I didn't know about his account. I only knew that Tapek was a mechanic, and we actually were fleeing together on the 7th January 1979, and we reached Om Leang together. However, later on we separated.
It's 11:30, Mr. President, and as I said, I have a few important subjects to cover.
President, thank you, and Mr. Prakon, the Chamber would like to thank you, and the hearing of your testimony as witness can now be concluded. Your testimony may contribute to the ascertainment of the truth in this case, and you are no longer required to be in the courtroom, and you may return to wherever you wish to, and the Chamber wishes you all the very best. And Mr. Mohamed Tia, the Chamber would also like to thank you, and you are also excused. Court officer, please work with Visu to make a transport arrangement for Mr. Prakon to return to his residence or wherever he wishes to go to. This afternoon, the Chamber will commence hearing testimony of another witness, that is 2 TCW 808, in relation to S21. It is now time for our lunch adjournment. We take a break now and resume at 1:30. Security personnel, you are instructed to take his pawn to the waiting room downstairs and have him returned to attend the proceedings this afternoon before 1:30. The court is now in recess.